What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday we had a big report that was posted online going over Nintendo apparently getting ready to show off a big reveal with a game that could be releasing next year. That coming to us from Monolith Soft, and we're going to go over that one here today. Also, we're going to be talking about the PlayStation 5 and a series of tests that was run with the system and the expandable NVMe drives, and some of the results were a bit surprising. We're also going to be talking about a game that we had gone over before that was rumored that's now been confirmed be heading to the Nintendo Switch. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with a big update that was announced by Microsoft, and that has to do with Ninja Theory's Hellblade. We can see this over on Twitter, where they announced, "We're excited to announce a new free update for Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, available now on the Xbox Series X and Series S. That includes ray tracing on both Series X and S, up to 4K resolution, up to 120 Hz, updated materials, particles, and details, and chapter select." They also put out a little chart here kind of detailing the different modes, because there are actually several of them: performance, resolution, and enriched. It sounds like enriched is just going to basically push either of the systems as hard as possible, getting the best details and effects out of it, which does include ray tracing, a dynamic 4K resolution, and 30 FPS on the Series X, and ray tracing with full HD and 30 FPS on the Series S. Or if you're on the Series X, you can go full frame rate, have 120 Hz with a dynamic 1080p resolution. Either way, though, pretty cool to see this update get released and just kind of get announced and put out there, especially if you have Game Pass and a Series X. You can go ahead and download Hellblade and check out this new update. Also, we've talked about Gamescom a bit here. That's coming up in a couple of weeks, and it looks like we now have Microsoft confirming their presence there with some announcements. We can see this over on Twitter, where the Xbox UK says, "We saved you a front row seat. We technically got everyone a front row seat, but we saved yours. Promise." That's August 24th, 6 p.m. BST. And we can also see Aaron Greenberg tweeted out, "Join us digitally, Gamescom this year. Our Xbox stream is focused on game updates coming this year, so to set expectations, no new reveals or major surprises, but the team has a fun stream planned with our amazing hosts." And I mean, I don't think it's going to be anything too crazy, and that's Gamescom. I'm going in, like I said, with lowered expectations here, but they could have some announcements around Game Pass, and that's always fun to just have games kind of thrown in there, and it's like, oh, I can go download that right now, and I mean, that's good. Also, updates around games coming out. I would expect them to talk a bit more about Forza Horizon 5, and who knows, they could also maybe go over some new details for Halo Infinite. Those are their two really big releases here this year, and I figured this would be part of their media tour to kind of ramp up marketing there, so that would make a lot of sense. Either way, though, something to look forward to here with Xbox at Gamescom. Oh, and speaking of Game Pass, it does look like Game Pass will be getting another day one release from a third party, this being Sega. It's not exactly a game that I see a lot of people talking about, certainly not one that a ton of people are excited for, but it is nice to see it heading to Game Pass for PC. That's right. The PC side is going to be getting a day one third-party game. We can see this over at news.xbox.com, where it says Humankind launching day one with Xbox Game Pass for PC. Now, this game is releasing on the 17th, and we can see it says here, "Many of you got a peek into gameplay during the closed beta last month, and I'm excited to announce that Humankind, the 4X strategy game from Amplitude Studios and Sega, will be available on PC day one with Xbox Game Pass." And like I said, Humankind's kind of been flying under the radar. I remember this is the game we were leading up to its reveal, and Sean said, "Oh, maybe it's a AAA Knights game," and it ended up being Humankind. So it was a bit of a letdown, I think, for what people were expecting, but fans of like the strategy genre, I'm sure, have enjoyed it. With the closed beta, people seem to have some pretty good impressions of the game, and it's even better here going to Xbox Game Pass for PC, as we see a lot of people tend to just kind of try out games if it's thrown into Game Pass, and for something like Humankind, I think that will be a positive for it. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with a big reveal that is reportedly coming up here for Nintendo. Could be happening in a couple of months, maybe in a Nintendo Direct that people are starting to anticipate now, maybe in like September or October. Has to do, though, with Monolith Soft. Now, going back to Xenoblade Chronicles 2, that really rounded out a very good first, 8 or 9 months there for the Switch, that coming out in December 2017. Then, of course, last year we had Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. We've also had Torna Golden Country kind of in there as well. So Monolith has been really putting out a bunch of releases as we've gone through the Switch's generation. However, it does appear, according to a recent report, that they are gearing up to show Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and this is very exciting for Xenoblade fans. We can head over here. This from Imran Khan over at Fanbyte, where he says, according to our sources here, we can indeed confirm that to be the case. Moreover, the game is nearing its final stages of development, but its release date may be held back for any number of reasons. The third Xenoblade Chronicles game in development at Monolith Soft is a sequel to Xenoblade Chronicles 2, currently the best-selling game in the series. The ending of the trilogy takes place in the far-flung future with a few returning characters who have long outlived their human counterparts. Xenoblade 3 was set to be revealed earlier this year and may still be announced before the end of the calendar year, but has had a difficult time with pandemic development and optimizing the game for the Switch. The game is aiming for more character models on screen at once than any previous title, accounting for both playable characters and enemies. If all goes well, the game could be released as soon as this first half of next year, delayed from its original and now exceedingly unlikely winter 2021 target date. And once again, there we are with the COVID and the pandemic, remote work, kind of pushing things back a bit here with what they had previously planned. This game apparently was going to be a holiday title for Nintendo 2021, according to this report here, now being pushed into 2022. I mean, we'll know more when we see it, obviously, and it's not surprising for people to hear that there is another Xenoblade game coming out, another game from Monolith Soft. They've been ramping up for a little while now with a ton of people coming on board there at the studio. They've expanded heavily, and obviously they do run support for Breath of the Wild 2 as well. So to hear that they're ramping up for that, not surprising, but I like the idea of them seemingly pushing the Switch to its limits here with Xenoblade Chronicles 3 as reported, with more enemies and characters on screen. Now, I am reminded of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and the performance and visuals that were going on there. It wasn't the greatest. Like, the resolution would drop pretty low to the point where if you were in handheld mode, your character's facial features would just kind of disappear. It would just be like a blank face. So wasn't the greatest in terms of resolution, dropping into, like, I think the 300p, somewhere in there area, as we've seen several technical breakdowns of it. But the game is very fun, and I do enjoy the Xenoblade series, and I do wonder more enemies and characters on screen, because like with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, when I would play it, I did notice a lot of the times you would basically have damage sponge enemies that were very large, and if maybe they go in and they say, okay, let's have a bunch of large enemies and then all of your characters on screen, I could kind of understand why they are working through optimization for it right now. But if this really is a 2022 title, Nintendo is starting to really build up next year for Switch releases, starting with Pokemon Arceus. We know Splatoon 3 is coming out. Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 is at least targeted for 2022. We'll see if that sticks in there. And then we could have something like a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 on top of, I'm sure, several other games that they are getting prepared for. So that could be the big final push, I would say, for the generation for many of these studios, who would then go into restarting their development cycles that could last 3 to 4 years and maybe get ready for the next Switch. Either way, though, having Xenoblade Chronicles 3 start to get talked about here, and maybe we could see it here pretty soon, it's exciting stuff. So I guess we can look forward to maybe a Nintendo Direct here in the next couple of months. We'll see. Next up, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 and some tests that have been run on the M.2 slot, where you can put your own NVMe drive in, with that Samsung 980 Pro that I've installed in mine even, and the internal storage on the PlayStation 5, something that's been talked about a lot by Sony as being super fast and extremely quick when it comes to loading and all of this. Well, it turns out a series of tests that's been done now by Digital Foundry in their own video has found that the NVMe slot using your own SSD, specifically the one they used was that 980 Pro, actually yielded better results than running the game like Ratchet and Clank off of the internal storage. This is very surprising, mostly because even the frame rate appeared to be affected by running it off of the Samsung drive as opposed to the internal storage that Sony has set up. And Digital Foundry did go through in their video, which I'll link down below, and I recommend checking out because it was very interesting to see all of this kind of in play as they were going through it. But a few things that were suggested were like, hey, the OS has to be run off of the internal SSD while the game is running, whereas maybe if it's running off of the NVMe drive, there's less going on there to have game data come in from it. So at this point, I think a lot of people are just kind of looking around wondering why this is exactly. It's very odd, certainly, but I mean, the results are there. Even the load times seem to be a bit faster off of the SSD that you would install. And it does make me wonder as we go along here, and we can even get faster drives that come out that we can install throughout the PlayStation 5's generation, if maybe we get to a point where it's better to run it off of the expandable storage that you install, or maybe as we go along, Sony continues to optimize and kind of build their games around the internal storage, and it either levels out a bit or even becomes faster in general on that internal storage. Just something to keep an eye out there, at least from initial tests, and I'm sure Digital Foundry is going to be doing quite a few more with different SSDs that they get a hold of. Looks like the expandable storage is the way to go to play your games from. Next up, let's talk about a game that had been rumored to be going to the Nintendo Switch after it appeared on an online retailer's website, and that is Darksiders 3. It's now been confirmed it is heading to the Switch. We can see this over on Twitter from THQ Nordic, where they say, "Unleash the fury on the go. Darksiders 3 is coming to Nintendo Switch on September 30th with both DLCs, Keepers of the Void and the Crucible." Now, the game does appear to be priced at $39.99, and it will launch on the Switch September 30th. So about a month and a half or so from now, it'll be out. And I mean, that is a pretty quick announcement to release. It will be available physically as well as digitally there. But Darksiders 3, like I said before, I enjoyed it on the Xbox. It took them long enough to get it over to the Switch, but as we've seen, if companies didn't immediately jump on the Switch like we saw with Bandai, it takes them a while to get things caught up here and get these games moved over, especially if it comes to something like Darksiders 3 that does have performance issues on like the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. I'm sure there is more work that goes into it to make sure it works well enough on the Switch, and that's something we're gonna see here when they do release it next month. It is good that they are putting all the DLC in there and kind of making it like a Darksiders 3 complete edition, because they are looking for $40 on the game, and we've talked about it several times where it will go on sale or just be given away with Xbox Live Games with Gold. That's kind of the big issue we run into with some of these late Switch ports. It's nice to have it portably, or at least have that option for the Switch. It's just then you look over at the other platforms, and because the game has been out so long and it's taken a while to go to the Switch, you see prices like for Dot Hack under $10, and you see prices like for Darksiders where it's pretty cheap, or they're just giving them away. But that's kind of the way it is with the Switch now, getting these games a bit later. Look out for it next month, though, on September 30th at $39.99. I did enjoy it, and I do recommend checking it out if you have not already. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a patent that was discovered online from Sony. And it's fun looking at these patents because you get an idea as to what these different companies are thinking of when they are trying to develop these different products. This one has to do with the PlayStation VR headset, where Sony found some pretty good success with the first headset, and certainly they've been coming up with all kinds of different ideas to kind of evolve the platform as they move into, I guess, next year when they'll have the PlayStation VR 2 headset to show off. But take a look at this patent here. This was discovered online by a website of VR Focus, and it's a patent from 2019, but you can see here, it does appear that Sony had the idea of putting a screen on the outside of the headset so that people around you, I guess, can see what you're seeing. And that's the biggest thing with VR right now, is it's a very isolating experience. It's certainly not a social one where you and other people in the room can enjoy it all at the same time. It's really whoever is wearing the headset is getting the experience. Then people kind of sitting around you or watching you just have no idea what's really going on, right? Or they're not getting the same experience. I guess the idea of having the screen on the outside, you can do different party games even, and I'm sure there are a few things that they had come up with here, and I don't think this is what Sony is going to do. It would certainly change things up big time when it comes to virtual reality and trying to bring people in the room around you, kind of into the action. It just, to me, this looks like something they were toying around with, because when you put a screen on the outside of it, then you got to also account for energy and like heat, and then a screen on the other side and making sure all that works. I'm sure cost comes into play, and with what Sony appears to be doing just with the controllers alone and some of the rumors around the specifications of the headset that they currently have in development or are looking to show off next year, I don't think this would be a great idea with that in mind. But again, I like to see these patents and just kind of what these different companies are thinking of with their products, like putting a screen on the other side of the VR headset. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, November marks 20 years since Metal Gear Solid 2 released. Have you played it yet? And gotta be honest, this one hurt a bit. 65% said no, I never had a chance. 35% said yes, I played it at least once. And can you believe it, by the way? This November, 20 years since Metal Gear Solid 2 came out. One of the biggest fake outs in video game history. Leading up to it, we saw the trailers, it's just Snake, and it looked like you were mostly just gonna be on the oil tanker the whole time, and then you get it, and after 2 hours, complete left turn out of nowhere in that game, and yeah, it left people kind of mad, but that was the fun thing about back then in 2001, is things didn't get spoiled before the game came out. Although that's probably also one of the reasons people thought that Death Stranding was something else and not just a game where you walk and deliver packages, and then it comes out and it really was just a game where you walk and deliver packages. Anyway, more of you have to play Metal Gear Solid 2, although that also might be on Konami for not getting these games completely ported over to current platforms. You can play it through backwards compatibility right now, I know, on the Xbox Series X and Xbox One, but like, Konami should be making a serious effort to just go get the older Metal Gear Solid games, put them all together in a nice little package, and release them on the Switch, the PlayStation 5, and the Xbox all over again. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Keon saying, imagine releasing a Game Boy Online where you can play games like Pokemon Red, Blue Online and battle and trade Pokemon with other people online. Now, I know before on the 3DS, they had like the older Pokemon game brought up and put on there, and they even had like the 3DS themed systems. I do wonder if they did Game Boy for the Switch, if they would just grab one of the older Pokemon games, even just like Yellow, just bring that up. It makes sense. And once again, Nintendo likes to do things that doesn't necessarily make sense, even though it seems like you would get a lot of signups because, hey, look, there's Pokemon on the Game Boy service. It just seems like something that would be almost too easy for Nintendo, and they got to make it a little harder on themselves. But that would certainly be a game to throw in there for that lineup. And hey, you know what? Go ahead and grab Pokemon Pinball as well, because that's also a good one that I think a lot of people have overlooked and maybe not even played yet. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, whether it's Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Nintendo's 2022, that if this report holds up, is looking to be pretty stacked right now. Let me know what you think about all of that. Also, what about the PlayStation 5 and the expandable storage, seemingly right now at least being faster than the PS5's internal storage? And then Darksiders 3 going to the Switch, probably not too surprising, but are you picking it up? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.